So my name's Kurt Luchia. Like we were talking earlier, I graduated from the Mechanical Engineering Technology program. And when I was here, when I came to this school, this building was a bunch of artist renditions. And it's absolutely amazing to see it in this and actually to be speaking on this stage. So what we're going to be talking about now, well, I'm going to go through a little bit about me in a second, but right after that, what I'm going to be giving you is a strategic thought process that has valued me, that has improved my value in my own workplace and my own endeavors. I actually, when I was listening to your speech, I saw a lot of little points coming out of it. So you'll see how it applies between the two, and then we'll get into how I've used it, and I'll show you some of my experiments that I've done with some products that I've released. So a little bit about me. My dad grew up in Alberta. My mother grew up in Saskatchewan. My dad was in the Air Force. When he retired, he took a job flying for Bombardier, so he was a test pilot for them. That brought us to Eastern Canada. So I graduated high school in Vankleekil, Ontario. Any VCI grads here? No one? A lot of the guys came to Algonquin. Right on. Awesome. What year?
2014.
Right on. I was 2007. So, yeah. I'm feeling old now. So I completed mechanical engineering technology here at Algonquin in 2011, and I served on the board of directors for the Students Association 2010-2011. So that was actually the year they approved the funding for this building and saw a whole bunch of the sketches, and it was really neat experience to see a part of. And while I'm here, I just have to thank the efforts of Jack Doyle for putting all this together, not today, but this building and everything. So thank you. Please round of applause for Jack Doyle. So my work experience, I actually joined the Army Reserves at 17. That helped me pay for college. Actually, I ended up graduating debt-free because of that, thank you. But besides the point, I worked for a year in Nortec, which is an HVAC company in Ottawa, Ontario. And then after the rest of my family started trickling back out west, after a year working in Ottawa, and my closest relative was living now in Regina, I decided to seek opportunity in Western Canada. So I threw a whole bunch of resumes out to Western Canada. I started getting some hitbacks, and all of a sudden there was one that came up in a little town called St. Bruce, Saskatchewan, which is a population of about 500 people. And they really needed someone like me with the education that I got from Algonquin. So I took the initiative and moved out to Melfort, Saskatchewan, which is about half hour north of there. So what we're going to be getting to, before I get into it, I'm just going to give you a quick little review on what applied research is. Applied research is the practical application of knowledge. 4 steps to it: identify the problems, gather data, analysis, and apply the knowledge. Now, what I'm going to show you, I saw this was first shown to me actually in the armed forces, but it can be applied anywhere. And it's called an OODA loop. And so what an OODA loop is: observe, orient, decide, act. And as soon as I started Googling the 4 steps of applied research, an OODA loop started to look at me. Because if you look, identify the problem, observe. Gather data, orient. Analysis, decide. Apply the knowledge, act. They line up. Now, this was actually created by a guy named Colonel John Boyd. He was an American fighter ace from the 50s to the 70s. He created this, and this is where I was thinking a lot about it in your speech. And his belief was, you hit him with well, one of the things was you hit him or you ain't, but the other thing was, his belief was it didn't matter on the size of the company or the size of the armed forces group or the business or even if you're a single lone person doing a startup. If you can get through this loop quicker than the other guy, you will be successful eventually. You will win over eventually. So this is what I've seen between talking to fellow Algonquin grads, myself, my own experiences. There's 2 ways that a companies are kind of set up. You got your customer, you have your sales, you have your R&D. And the whole lead up, which was just awesome between everyone, the customers have the problems. The R&D team, all of you here, you have the technical skills and the abilities to be able to solve their problems. The problem is the traditional way a company is set up, they have the problems, they bring them to the sales guys try to sell what they currently have, and then they'll take some of those points and they'll bring them to the R&D team. So say if you have 10 points that come across, sales team might filter out 6 of them, give you 5, 2 of them are irrelevant, and 3 of them are actually what needs to be done. You create that product, fulfill all the design requirements, provide it back to them, and it's only really half of what they needed. So this is what I've seen works quite a bit better. So you have a customer, sales, your R&D. And what this is doing is you have to get your R&D team directly with the customer as fast as possible, as close as possible. Like in my world, we're doing agricultural manufacturing. We're building farming equipment. And so I got to go out for days and days and days, last year and the years before, going out and we would mix chemicals and we were spraying and we were working on a farm and we got to talk to the guys, find out exactly what they didn't like, what they wanted, what they didn't like, what they saw value in, what they didn't see value in. You saw your own perspective on it and you saw what was lacking, what didn't happen. And then you can come up with the exact design requirements, design to it, and then look, they need 10 requirements. You delivered on all 10, and the sales guy's job is really easy now. He comes out, shows off the machinery, gives a sticker price, and away it's gone. Sales guy jobs becomes easier, your job becomes easier, and the whole company as a whole becomes more successful. And because this loop is a lot smaller now of being able to observe, orient, decide, act, you're moving through it quicker. So this was actually just last week. So I actually got invited by John Deere dealers up into northern Alberta. I don't know if there's anyone from Alberta here. Come out. Right on. So I was up in Peace River country. I went as far north as Falher, so you know that's probably a little bit up there. And so we were going to John Deere dealership, and what they were doing is they were holding these sprayer clinics. And so they'll bring in a couple industry experts. I was really honored to be invited to that one, by the way, because the guy next to me here, his name is Dr. Tom Wolf. He's got a PhD in the application of chemicals and growth of grain. So I ran into him at the release, and I'll get to that later. But what really stuck out on this was when I met this man here. His name is Jason, and he's from John Deere directly. And so he is actually a product manager for the designing and manufacturing of just the cabs. So they work on just the cabs, and so they just released their product. You know, the life cycle of the product, they got a couple years now where their workload on the R&D team's a little bit less. So what they do is they've started up this new program in the last couple years, and it's called Through Their Eyes. And so they take their R&D team, they send them out to a whole bunch of different dealers, and they get to talk to the customers and find out what they like, what they didn't like, learn about what the competitors are doing and what they're doing, and basically get hands-on feedback from the farmers and how to make their products better. So this was my problem. So this is a sprayer setup. So we have freshwater tanks here. We'll have concentrated chemical. This is a tote here, but it could be delivered in jugs or it could be delivered in a powdered chemical as well. This is the blending machine. So this is actually what I'm going to be showing the process of what I did. And the sprayer. So this sprayer is actually the same model that we were standing on in that other picture. You can see a 120-foot boom. You got nozzles all the way down every 20 inches that they'll drive and they'll be spraying on the crop. And funny thing, believe it or not, the most used piece of farm equipment on a farm, in Western Canada at least, is not the tractor. This spraying machine, you'll be spraying every acre 4 to 5 times in a season. So this is actually the most used piece of farm equipment nowadays. So observe continued. So a typical large Western Canadian farm, you're looking at about 12,000 farmed acres. And because of that 4 to 5, you're looking at 53,000 acres that has to be sprayed. And that works out to be, in this case for this farm, it was 630 run hours per year on the sprayer. So these are the jugs that I was talking about. So you can buy chemical in jugs, 10-liter jugs, and you're going to be using on every quarter section, which is about 168, well, it is 160 acres. You're looking at using about 10 jugs for each chemical. Well, not for each chemical, but for each batch. And that works out, if you're using nothing but jugs, that's 3,313 jugs a year. So there's also other products out there. Now you can get powdered chemical. Now some of the advantages, these have kind of been avoided for the longest time because they are hard to blend. They'll plug those nozzles that I was talking about earlier, and then once you have a plugged nozzle, you're missing application, you're not delivering properly, and by the time you realize, now you have to stop and go out and take it apart, try to clear the clog, or you might have to change the nozzle or whatever. But these have quite a bit of problems in the application of them. However, It's really hard to see, but this little batch mixture says 130 acres. So this one chemical will do 130 acres, this one little solution. The equivalent over here, these are 10-liter jugs, probably using about 4 for that one chemical. Problem with that, like I said, we have 12,000 acres to farm, and we have, what, 59,000, I'm forgetting the number, but so we have a whole pile that's to actually spray. You're looking at transportation costs, liquids are gonna have to be kept indoors and heated, powders. You can send someone out with a car, put them all in the back of a trunk, and drive it back. So quite a bit easier to work with if you can mix it properly. And also the spare depreciation. I just got this from a John Deere equipment salesman, but that massive sprayer, the sticker price on that's about $500,000, and the sprayer depreciation rate is about $300 per run hour. So if you can cut time on the actual use of that sprayer, not only are you covering more acres, but you're also going to be saving the farmer a whole pile of money. So Orient, this is what I was up against. So this was the industry standard up until about a year ago. So what are the weaknesses in this current design? We're just going to go through. We're going to go through two things, like two big things that I ended up changing. So some of the weaknesses. Now, when they're breaking those jugs, they don't open up a lid and then pour it out. What they'll do is they'll take this. You see this knife block? This rim here is actually this rim up here. This is a slightly different model than this one, but it's the same idea. You have this lid. You open it up, and then on the inside there's this knife. And so you take the jug, you break it onto the knife. The chemical drains out. And then you rinse it, and then you dispose of the jug. So like you saw in that big bag of jugs from just that day. So some of the weaknesses on this one, a lot of people complained, and what we saw and what we used in the field was they were holding up chemical, just a little ring of chemical on the inside of the jugs. And what that results in is environmental problems, because if they don't rinse it out and they try to throw it out, and if a person's inspecting them when they're receiving the broken jugs, you could run into issues that way, because it's a concentrated chemical, it's not a diluted one. And the other thing you could be running into is, well, in best practices, they actually clean out the jug. That's time. And that, like I said, $300 per run hour. And so what are problems that have not been addressed? That powder that we were talking about, that powder, if you look the way they're mixing it, they have a bulkhead down here. That's right there. And then they just have an elbow. So all this is doing is spraying out into here, and it's giving a nice little rinse, but the problem is there's a little venturi here, and so that sucks. They'll operate, and the water will come through, little Bernoulli's principle there, and it'll end up creating a vacuum, and it'll suck through. And what'll end up happening is this doesn't cleanly blend it, and so you end up getting undissolved particles into your sprayer. You don't know, because it's a closed and sealed tank. And then you go spraying and you start plugging nozzles. So people avoid it, even though there's cheaper costs, cheaper transportation costs. You don't have to heat the indoors and everything to actually store it through the winter. They avoid it just because they can't handle it. They don't have the right tool for the job. So this is what we ended up. This is some more Orient. So I did some tests on this. I'm going to do a little drop test here. So that's what it looks like. Now the time I did was from black line to black line. And you can see right there, the chemical's holding up. In this case, it's just food coloring and water. So you can see I ended up getting 6.2 seconds to drain, and like I said, the time was from black line to black line. 250 milliliters hung up in this little pocket in the corner, and like I said, you're looking at environmental issues, you're looking at time issues if you want to deal with it properly. Now, based on that farm that I showed you, that typical larger Western Canadian farm, that works to be 828 liters per year having issues. That's a lot of chemical that you're paying for that you're going to have to then put lots of more time into, or you're throwing out, which is a complete no-no. So this is what we decided to do. You end up getting, what we ended up doing is we changed the shape of it. Now you saw how there was 4 points of contact on that last one? These are really small things, and they're just applied. It's a shear force equation. Like all the mechanical engineering guys, I think they teach that, second semester? Shear force, possibly. So it's not really complicated stuff, but I just eliminated two sides. So no matter what jug you're using, I'm always going to be half the impact force in order to do the same cut. But it's really not the same cut because they only had 4 little points that were on the sides that actually, let's see if we can go back. Please, there we go, okay. And you can see when it folds up, you only have 4 points. It's kind of hard to see on this picture. but only 4 points that are actually going to be flush when you're actually draining. Now on this, it cuts 3 flush cuts, and so you end up having total drainage. So we'll just do the drop test on this one. So the last one was the industry standard. Every farm in Western Canada was using that last one. This one here, 2.8 seconds to drain, and if you look at the completion of that drain, we're not leaving any chemical in there. Everything you paid for is now into your sprayer. You're not running into throwing it out. You're not running into putting it into the environment. You're also looking into, what's it called, not having to spend extra time to clean that out. So 2.8 seconds to drain. That saves 3.1 run hours per year reduced, which equals to just shy of $1,000 saved in depreciation on your sprayer annually. And that's just the one knife block that we did. There's a whole bunch of other innovations that we did on here, but really can't go through it in this time. So other things we did to deal with the powdered chemical, like I said, if you see how many jugs are actually going through, this is a lot less, but we need to thoroughly mix the dry products. So what we did is we have these 2 eductors, which work also, once again, Bernoulli's principle. And basically you're forcing water through here. It's creating a little suction area in here as it necks down, and you're getting liquid that's inside the tank already mixing with this and then blowing. So the way these are sized, it will turn over all 75 US gallons in 20 seconds. So you can put a batch into there, put a whole bunch of water, and then you can stir this whole thing around. 20 seconds, everything's stirred. But not only that, we put 4 vertical ribs. And so that flow, I actually changed its production model. It turns the other way now, but besides the point. So what will end up happening is it swirls the liquid, and then as the liquid's going by these vertical ribs, it'll break up the turbulence, and so you'll go from laminar flow to turbulent flow. And so you get a much better mixing. So here's a little video. So I'm dropping food coloring in, and I'm just videoing this with a GoPro. I did all these just for R&D. I never thought I was going to be showing them off. But you can see right here, right as it goes by a vertical rib, you can see it rips apart. And here's actually some film that we took on a farm. And now I have the pump going full, and you can see it's every 20 seconds, it's turning over every gallon in there. But it's not full, so it's really only probably taken about 10 seconds or 8 seconds to turn over everything. So now we have a product that actually can thoroughly mix chemicals. And this is, like, you get people who just don't even want to touch the stuff, the dry chemicals, because of the problems. And I show them that, and they're looking and they're seeing dollar signs because it's a lot cheaper to buy powdered chemical than it is liquid chemical. So now ACT. This is the final part of it. We released this product to market at Western Canada's Farm Progress Show in June just last year. This is actually, it's hard to make out, it's a little blurry, but it's 7:59. It's actually 1 minute before the doors opened. And the competitors heard that this machine was coming out, and they were sitting at the door with it locked, and I was just smiling. It was actually pretty nice. So when it comes to personal development, when you create your environment that you start to succeed, it's really not that hard to see a passion in it. And so, go back to my applied research day, if someone told me that I'd be standing on a stage a few years from now talking about mixing chemicals and having an amazing passion in it, living in Western Canada, I'd call you crazy. But it's completely true. At that show, that guy that was standing next to me at the sprayer clinic in that picture, Tom Wolf, he comes up to me. I didn't know who he was. And he's looking over the unit, and I thought he was a farmer, and I'm showing him all the features on it, like a lot more than the 2 ones that I showed you here. And he looks at me, and he's like, you know, a lot of people can't appreciate what you've done here, but he's like, I like it, and I get it. And then he gives me his card, and I'm thinking, okay, big farmer. There are some farms out there, believe it or not, 110,000 plus acres, massive farms. And then I look at it, and it says Tom Wolf, PhD. I'm like, oh, okay. What was your thesis? And he's like, scratches his face, and he's like, application of chemicals and growth of grain. I'm like, oh, you're the guy. And then he's like, yeah, I'm actually the nozzle guy. And he has a Twitter handle, and 7,500 farmers in Western Canada follow him, and he tweeted out about it. And it went absolutely insane since then. About not 2-3 hours after he came by through the booth, this agricultural industry magazine, Real Agriculture, came, and they're like, sign this. 5 seconds later, putting a mic on me, and we're doing an interview right at the show. And they posted that online and whatnot. And so it's gone quite amazing since then. So we've had great regional acceptance. Western Canada, it's gone insane out there. Here are 2 farmers. I worked with them on an R&D project for a machine that rolls canola swaths. So that margarine you're getting, it's actually all grown out right where I am. But what's it called? These guys here, I worked with them on that, and then what ended up happening was they had an issue with their unit, the competitor's unit, and they looked at it and it said at Burgo Ag in the tweet, and they're like, it's plastic and that's Burgo. I know who's doing that. So they had my phone number. They gave me a phone call and they're like, hey, I need your unit. We're having some problems. So they're actually one of the first buyers. We've had international orders. Like I'm talking, I work for a division of a larger company, but the division I'm working for is 15 people. And we're in a town of 590 people in Saskatchewan. And I'm getting cold called by like farmers and pistachio farmers in California. And they're like, hey, I saw this online. I want it. And I'm like, these are your good problems. So this one here, actually, I got this text just last week. The first units have actually arrived in South Africa. So this unit, this guy, he's one of the dealers down there, and he's proudly standing next to it. We've got actually another shipment on a whole bunch of them going to Australia, and the United States. We're signing up dealers like daily, pretty much right now, which is a good problem to have. It's only been a year, and sales really picked up right about November. So take-home notes. This is basically, you've got to get to know your customers. If you know your customers, if you know their problems, then you actually have a chance of solving them. And just a little quote from Winston Churchill, the pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity, and the optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty. That's Winston Churchill. So thank you guys for listening to this speech, and I'm very excited to see all your projects. Other than that, I can turn it over. Thank you.